Welcome back to Aidaptiv. Earlier this week, Apple released a research paper. We're going to go over that in just a moment, but essentially it said that there are huge flaws in LLMs and LRMs, large language models and large reasoning models, and that's why the title here, ChatGPT, is doomed. They put out big flaws when it comes to complex problem reasoning. We'll go over that in a minute. And then on the other side, Sam Altman released a blog post, and he couldn't have been more rosy about the future of what he sees for ChatGPT and not only that, AI in general. So let's go ahead and dig in. Here's the Apple research paper titled The Illusion of Thinking: Understanding the Strengths and Limitations of Reasoning Models via the Lens of Problem Complexity. And here we see Apple. So I'm not going to go through this whole paper. I'll bore you to tears. What I am going to do is hit a couple points in here, and then I did have ChatGPT put together a summary, just a quick summary that we're going to glance over. So recent generations of frontier language models have introduced large reasoning models. So those are the thinking models. Think of if you use ChatGPT regularly, and you know the difference in the models. Those are the O1 models, the O3 models, the real thinking models out there that generate detailed thinking processes before providing answers. So they think before answering. Well, these models demonstrate improved performance on reasoning benchmarks. Their fundamental capabilities and scaling properties and limitations remain insufficiently understood. Current evaluations primarily focus on established mathematical and coding benchmarks, emphasizing final answer accuracy. What they're saying there is if you have a math problem, you have a solvable solution. We're not talking abstract. We're talking 2 + 2 = 4. And much more complex to that. You get the point. There is a solvable solution at the end. Coding, we want you to create X, and you create X, whether it's create an algorithm to solve the math problem, or whether it's even recreate a game that I can play. It's a solvable problem with an understood solution. So let's keep going from there. Current evaluations primarily focus on established mathematical coding. Okay, we covered that. However, this evaluation paradigm often suffers from data contamination and does not provide insights into the reasoning traces, structure, and quality. What are they talking about there? Well, essentially they're saying that the models have memorized the solutions, and thus it contaminates the data. So the training data that they're training them with, they already know an answer, and so they can just shortchange the reasoning right to the answer. And it also doesn't provide their ability to see the structure and quality of how they thought through the problem and came up with the solution. Chain of thought helps with that, but we don't get chain of thought for OpenAI, for instance, on O1 and O3 models. They don't share that. And so we don't have that structure. Plus, we don't have access into what's called the black box. That's where all the neurons are, and they're firing, so we don't get to go see what's going on inside. In this work, we systematically, and this is Apple, systematically investigate these gaps with the help of controllable puzzle environments that allow precise manipulation of compositional complexity while maintaining consistent logical structures. What they're saying is they are going to test these models using puzzles. So think about it like thinking puzzles. And we'll go over that in just a minute. You'll get to see exactly what they're doing. But they are going to test them on puzzles because there isn't a way for them. Well, it'll say that. This setup enables the analysis of not only the final answer because of how they got there, but also the internal reasoning traces, meaning as they made moves to get to the final answer, they're able to trace it, offering insights into how LRMs think. So because it's a puzzle, they can see that it was solved, but they can see all the steps that it took to get there and how the model reasoned, and gives them insights into how it's reasoning. Through extensive experimentation across diverse puzzles, we show that frontier LRMs face a complete accuracy collapse beyond certain complexities. So that kind of gives away a little bit of what they find. So let's go down here. we're not going to bore ourselves with this, but essentially what they do is they take the models, and I'll show you down here. We're going to go through exactly, when I say that, an overview here in just a minute. They show them passing on math and AIME. This is coding. This is a math test. 24 and 25 are two different types of coding, AIME 24 and 25 coding tests. And so you can see the models perform well, and they keep scaling over time. So if we look, they scale over time, and they're still getting very close to 100% accuracy. And on the the AIME 24 down here with this inference, they're still doing well in this model, and over here both models actually do very well, the non-thinking versus the thinking. So overall they do pretty good. That's what is a typical test, right? Here's a math problem, or here's code. Write this code for me. This is where what Apple is doing is this what they're talking about with puzzles and with being able to trace the steps of the thought process of these models. So here's the initial state in the Tower of Hanoi. If you haven't played this game, you have 3 pieces. You want to get them stacked onto this far right, and you have to come up with the steps to do that. So we can see in the middle state, the model has figured out how to probably take in place that one there. The top one is the way that would work. The middle there, and then take the top one, put it back. We end up here, so you can trace how it did it. And then it takes this one, and has taken that one and put it there, and then we can see that it solved the puzzle here. So checkers, I'm not going to go over that. River crossing is another game in blocks. Essentially, knowing how this works allows you to see how the model thought and then solved the puzzle, and that was accurate in the end. So that's essentially what they're testing these models on. And if you come down here, we have some graphs where as it gets, look at this, complexity, the number of disks. So the one we watched was 3 disks. Look at that. It's very good. But when it gets up to 8, look at the crash. So this is the thinking model here. The simple model did okay through there. The thinking model does better, and then it crashes, and then both of them perform terribly as they go forward. Checker jumping, that's even faster. It shows it at like 3, and then it crashes. And then the blocks and the river crossing, you can see exactly the same type of crash. So what they're showing there is, as it gets more complex, even though a thinking model thinks more, it isn't performing well in this particular test, which is puzzles. So that's, in a nutshell, a good overview. Let's jump over to take a look at how ChatGPT summed this up. So if we look at this, I've already gone over this on how they simulate that. But compare pairs of models that share the same. That's the way they did it. They did 25 attempts per puzzle instance while gradually increasing puzzle complexity. And they log every generated chain of thought token and every intermediate move so they can see where the reasoning breaks. So there you have it. If we look, the easy puzzles, plain LLMs often solve them faster and with fewer tokens, which I would expect. LRMs, which are large reasoning models, the thinking models, usually hit the answer right away. But this is interesting. They keep talking sometimes to themselves and into mistakes and overthinking it and waste at times. And they show that in there. Mid-level puzzles, and this is not surprising, LRMs perform better. We saw that in the results. And so if we look over here, they wander through many wrong paths, but eventually land on the right one. Hard puzzles, both models typically crash. We saw that in the graphing and went over that. So giving the model the exact, so they gave the model exact algorithm on how to solve it in the Tower of Hanoi procedure, and it still didn't help. It still failed when it was more complex. So there's something going on there that they talk about. And failure patterns are inconsistent. For some puzzle sizes, a model can execute 100 flawless moves, And then all of a sudden it gets onto a slightly bigger puzzle and fails right away. And so that's odd. So what they're saying here is 3 regime rule of thumb. LRMs shine only in a Goldilocks middle difficulty band. So they don't shine on the simple side and they don't shine on the more complex side. It's in the what they call the Goldilocks middle difficulty band. No free lunch from longer thoughts. So more text is not equal to more reasoning once the tasks exceed a certain compositional depth. What that meant was as it got more complex, the model just kind of quit. It didn't keep trying to think longer, even though it had the capacity. It had the token amounts to continue to think. It just flattened out and quit. So that's a peculiarity in the study as well. And then a scaling bottleneck, the fact that LRMs reduce their own thinking effort as tasks get harder while still under the context limit, the limit of what they can spend in tokens to think. Even they didn't come up with the right and they just answer and they just quit. Hence that today's chain of thought training tricks have hit a ceiling. So the study looks at abstract. Okay, we looked at this. All LRMs were black box APIs. So the users, I talked about that. You can't see inside. And why do LRMs abort their own reasoning on hard problems? And how can we teach them to verify each step so they don't drift to wrong answers? So this is basically a very negative or damning paper on large reasoning models, which is really, if you think about it, what are the cutting edge of all of the models today? So if we go to ChatGPT, the O3 models and the O3 Pro models are at the very top. If we go to Gemini 2.5 Pro, that's at their very top. Claude 3.7 Sonnet, that's their top, at least in the testing. And then if we look at any of the other thinking models like DeepSeek, which is their R3 is their thinking model as well. And so that one is at the very top, right? So those are all the cutting edge is what I'm trying to say. And all of them perform poorly as far as it goes with the puzzles. So, we can talk about that in just a moment. I'll talk about my thoughts on that in just a moment. I want to contrast that with Sam Altman's, this is his blog post, and it's called the Gentle Singularity. And this came out right around the same time as that paper. Is it coincidence? I don't think so, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We are past the event horizon, Sam Altman writes. The takeoff has started. Humanity is close to building digital superintelligence, and at least so far, it's much less weird than it seems like it should be. So when he says the event horizon, if you think of a black hole, many times AGI and ASI are compared to event horizon of a black hole, where we can't really see that other side and we have to go into it and enter it. And once we do, it starts to really accelerate because in a black hole, right? It's gravity and speed and everything is just, it's a singularity event is what we would say, they say, right? That's what the singularity comes from, is that event horizon. And things just accelerate exponentially and also become a little weird. So let's go down to what else he says. In some big sense, ChatGPT is already more powerful than any human who has ever lived. And I would say I agree with him. Are we saying it's better in every way? No. But in plenty of ways, it is much more powerful than any human that ever lived, right? Accuracy, maybe at times, but it's much more accurate than most people ever are. Speed, it's way faster. That's absolutely shown and proven. And its depth of knowledge and depth of topics and ability to analyze impossible amounts of information for humans to be able to process and understand and be able to pull from. So yeah, in many ways, it is more powerful than any human that's ever lived. 2025 has seen the arrival of agents that can do real cognitive work. Writing computer code will never be the same. 2026 will likely see the arrival of systems that can figure out novel insights, come up with new ideas and concepts. Maybe not like way off from what we're doing, but some alterations. And even if it's a few percentage points better, meaning pushing our human knowledge faster and better than what we've come up with, or novel, meaning they aren't what we would have and they're just a little bit off of our concepts, that's still a huge improvement from where we are today, with the ability of AI to do that, 24/7, 365, and also capability of doing that type of work maybe that takes us 6 months or a decade or longer, and being able to shorten it down into maybe hours, days, or weeks. So that'll really move the needle. 2027 may see the arrival of robots that can do tasks in the real world. Probably on track with that. I don't think that's very far off. He writes down here, experts will probably still be much better than novices. This is important for those who are worried about jobs and stuff like that, as long as they embrace new tools. Generally speaking, the ability of one person to get much more done in 2020 or 2030 than they could in 2020 will be a striking change, and one many people will figure out how to benefit from. Well, I'd say it's already striking change in many areas in 2025 compared to 2020. He alludes to that down here. In the 2030s, intelligence and energy, ideas, and the ability to make ideas happen are going to become wildly abundant. These two have been the fundamental limiters on human progress for a long time. With abundant intelligence and energy and good governance, we can theoretically have anything else. What's he saying there? Well, intelligence to a certain extent has been limited. I mean, it was limited early on by those who, once we had books and could read, those who had access to books and those who didn't. It was limited then later on by those who had the time to read books and spend all that time, and those who didn't. And as we had progressed, computers, those who had and didn't, internet, those who had and didn't, smartphones, those who had and didn't. We could even go into now satellite access, offline access, cloud computing, being able to purchase that or whatever. And it's always been that way. So it is true. Intelligence, access to it, what we have access today dwarfs, imagine going back into even the 80s, 70s, what we have access today at our fingertips. We are so much more intelligent than the average person then, not because of us per se, but because of the access to intelligence at our fingertips. And then energy. Energy is always, think about it. Those are have and have nots energy. Cheap, affordable, reliable energy. We take it for granted in the West, but a storm comes through and you don't for a few days. Well, those who have and have not, now making that cheap and accessible to everybody, and then being able to scale it, and then making data centers and all of that, that is a limiter, as Sam Altman says, and that is going to get better. We already hear from scientists that they are 2 or 3 times more productive than they were before AI. I believe it. If we can do a decade's worth of research in a year or a month, then the rate of progress will obviously be quite different. I mean, a decade's worth of research in a year is 1/10, right? Or a month. That's 12, 1/20th, I think. So that would be insanely, an insane increase in the pace of development and the pace of innovation. From here on, the tools we have already built will help us find further scientific insights and aid us in creating better AI systems. So what we already have built with ChatGPT and AI and other algorithms will help us to be able to find new scientific insights, which will then drive other scientific insights or other improvements in AI, which drive it. And he's going to allude to that. Of course, this isn't the same thing as an AI system completely autonomously updating its own code, but nevertheless, this is a larval version of recursive self-improvement. So what is he saying? Recursive self-improvement. That is the ability for AI to improve AI. And we know that's there. We know it's already there in terms of helping those who work on AI do more with their time, the scientists, the experts, whether it's research or development, being able to do more with the given amount of time that you have or the resources you have and the number of scientists and developers working on AI. And robots that can build other robots, and in some sense, data centers that can build other data centers aren't that far off. I mean, once robots they're already being used, but once they can truly do a lot of the construction work, and we can speed 24/7, 365 days a year, and also build them at scale with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands on a given data center site, working all the time, doing whatever. That's going to speed it up. And that's why he says data centers that can build data centers. That's also once AI can write its own code, so to speak. So as data center production gets automated, the cost of intelligence should eventually converge to near the cost of electricity. He says that the cost of a ChatGPT query is 0.34 watts hours, about that of an oven would take in a little less than over a second, or a high efficiency light bulb would use in a couple of minutes. It also uses about 0.000085 gallons of water, roughly 1/15 of a teaspoon. And he's saying once the data center production gets more automated, especially with robotics, drops cost, then the cost of the data centers, it's a massive part of that expense, then the cost of intelligence will drop. The rate of technological progress will keep accelerating, and it will continue to be that case for people that people are capable of adapting to almost anything. There will be very hard parts like whole classes of jobs going away. But on the other hand, the world would be getting so much richer so quickly that we'll be able to seriously entertain new policy ideas we never could before, probably alluding to universal basic income. And we're going to end it up down here from a relativistic perspective. The singularity happens bit by bit and the merge happens slowly. We are climbing the long arc of exponential technological progress. It always looks vertical going forward and flat going backwards, but it's one smooth curve. What's he mean? When you're looking up, you're looking up, it's vertical. It looks like vertical. But when you're over here further, it looks flatter, is what he's trying to say. And think about it because of our memories in time. Think back to 2020 and what it would have sounded like to have something close to AGI by 2025 versus what the last 5 years have actually been like. And he's right. 2020, it would have thought like, wow, that's like straight up how we're going to get there and be close to that. In 2025, looking back at it, you're like, yeah, I mean, it was steady progress day after day after day. It wasn't like vertical the entire time. So he says we need to solve the alignment problem, meaning that we can robustly guarantee that we get AI systems to learn and act towards what we collectively really want over the long term. So in other words, have a humanity like-minded, protect humanity, keep it safe, aligned with our desires. And now that can be dangerous too, but how would I say, the good things, the good desires, the good things that we want. And then the second step, then focus on making superintelligence cheap, widely available, and not too concentrated with any person, company, or country. And that is very important. I mean, there's a lot of theories that somebody's going to get to superintelligence first, and then they're going to keep it to themselves, or there'll be a few countries with superintelligence, and the rest of the masses won't have it. That is a dangerous thing to have, extremely dangerous, because that is power concentrated in a few hands that make all the decisions, and you can legitimately not compete. You have no chance, no possibility of competing with it in any way, shape, or form, whether that's business, whether that's any kind of form of intelligence, or even warfare, or overthrowing the government, or anything that you can think of. It's not about weapons at that point. It's not about, when I say that, superintelligence is the weapon, because it can hack anything. It can take over anything. It can think through any scenario, outthink, outperform, solve, stop, literally. So that's what he's saying on that. So, and here we'll end it. OpenAI is a lot of things now, but before anything else, we are a super intelligence research company. We have a lot of work in front of us, but this is key. But most of the path in front of us is now lit, and the dark areas are receding fast. And he says, intelligence too cheap to meter is well within grasp. That's an incredibly positive outlook. So speaking of that, let's compare and contrast these two. All right, so we're going to take a look at the compare and contrast. Of course, I had ChatGPT help us with that. Here's a quick, in plain English, Apple's paper, large reasoning models look smart on easy tasks, but collapse at 0% accuracy once puzzles get truly hard. Longer chains of thought waste tokens and don't fix the problem. And if we look at Sam Altman's blog post, we're past the event horizon. 2025 agents already do real cognitive work. By 26, systems will generate novel insights. 27, robots will tackle real-world problems, ushering in intelligence too cheap to meter. So that's super intelligence. Cautious. The tone of the paper is cautious, even pessimistic. Today's LRMs give only the illusion of deep thinking and need new techniques before we can trust them on complex reasoning. Tone, boldly optimistic from Sam Altman. Current progress is just the beginning of an exponential climb towards superintelligence and massive productivity gains. And then the implication, slow down, retool, and measure reasoning step by step to avoid hidden failures. Altman, keep scaling and deploying. The upside of science, probability, and productivity, and quality of life is enormous if we manage safety and alignment. So let's talk about this for a second. How do we get such contrasting views? Why would we have two companies with such contrasting points of view? Well, let's talk about where each of them are and why they're impacted by what's going on. Okay? So if we talk about Apple, what we have to remember is, even in the title of this, the illusion of thinking, Apple is way behind right now on AI. They just had their WWDC conference. That's their biggest conference of the year. It's where everybody looks forward to it. They make massive announcements on what's going on, their developer conference. And this year, they had their conference, and guess what? AI was almost completely absent from it. Because Siri, behind, they're talking spring of 2026. Spring of 2026. Apple Intelligence, they announced that last year at WWDC. Unfulfilled promises, and quite honestly, it's pretty much a joke at this point. Now, is Apple totally dead in the water? I've done a whole discussion on that, on their problems, and I think I'm worried about them. Quite frankly, I think their leadership and Tim Cook is not the right person for the job right now. He's a bean counter, CFO, squeeze out the money. He's done that, and he's done a great job of it. Record profits, record valuation, all these things. But you can only do that for so long at a company before you lose the magic of who you are, which is they're innovators. And when the innovation stops, which it has, and because of a focus on monetization of existing products and leveraging existing products, you lose the root of who Apple is. And Steve Jobs now has been gone a long time. And I have seen their decline in innovation. Johnny Ive is gone, right? So who's the innovator at Apple? What is the product they've made that's innovative? I don't think we can really say anything other than I said the M4, but that's what's inside. I think M4 is great. I'm recording this on a Mac Mini, so if you think I'm an Apple hater, I'm literally doing this on a Mac. I'm not, but I am agnostic to technology. I use what's best, in my opinion, and I just switched to Mac to the M4 because of that. But I have an Android phone, and I've had an Android phone for 5 years and left iPhones because I saw a lack of innovation there. Apple Watch, watches have caught up, smartwatches have caught up. If we just keep going through, there's really nothing. I mean, their Vision Pro is a complete and utter failure. They missed AI. They've got a lot of problems going on. So they go into this developer conference, and guess what? They released this paper right before it. Do you think that's a coincidence? No, 100% not. They have to devalue what's going on. In fact, if we go to ChatGPT, look what it says the implication. Slow down, retool, and measure reasoning step by step to avoid hidden failures. So, yeah, they definitely would like the pace of innovation to slow down. If they can make us less confident in the current models and not believe that we're close to AGI and ASI and that ChatGPT is that far ahead or Google's that far ahead, right? Or Microsoft with Copilot, that benefits Apple. Now, do they have valid points in their research paper? Absolutely. I'm not trying to say they don't, but I'll just say what I think about it. I don't think I know these models were not made to solve visual problems like this. That's not what they excel at. We already know that we're going to have other models for robots, for instance, and they're working like crazy on those, and they've made massive progress. And those models learn by doing in virtual environments, and then they learn by doing in the real world. And in fact, we just had a model released from Meta. I forget the name of it, but it's a model that learned in virtual environments, watching millions of hours of video, right? Video from cameras of robots doing things, and you see they get to see how gravity works and everything like that. Those are the type of models, because what we're really facing in this right here in these is more, yes, it's reasoning, but it's also, to me, more of a 3D problem than a 2D problem. What do I mean by that? We know that LLMs and LRMs have struggled with 3D concepts. Like, okay, I've turned this direction, then I turn this direction at the pole. How do I, what way am I facing now? These type of things. They have not been good at them. They are not they're not great at 3D problem solving. To me, that's what we're looking at with the Tower of Hanoi, checkers jumping, and these other games. Can you really say they're 2D? Yes, absolutely represented in 2D. So are they true 3D? No, but they remind me of that, of a 3D problem, right? Because you're grabbing and moving something. Now, are these LLMs and LRMs made for this? They were not made, trained, or early on even intended for solving this type of problem. So I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges, what Apple's doing here. I do see some of the very valid points, and I think, can it help to be able to solve these type of problems? Absolutely. But we have to remember that it's taking screenshots, for instance, of our screens and interacting, and that has not been really effective yet either, with agents starting to potentially get better. I think it's going to take a hybrid system just like we have, that it understands images, that it can ingest video and kind of digest it. I think we need to have some visual systems, and I think a visual system, what I mean by that is a visual model, a true visual model that understands a world. And these are the things that Elon Musk is talking about, Satya Nadella has talked about, and that is a physics-based AI. physically based AI, where it understands physics. That's what I'm getting at. Something like that, I think, would have a much better time solving these type of problems, because it could watch it in video and understand it and be able to process it and then act upon what it's learned, like active learning. So I think that the current models, LLMs and LRMs, in terms of those models, I think can't say they'll always be limited here, because we'll still see advances, but I don't think that this is the best use case model for these type of problems. Maybe proved wrong. We'll see. But it makes sense that Apple would propose it, because, hey, if they get you to think and question a little bit where we're at, then it helps them, because they're behind, and they're not going to even really be in the game until spring of 26 if we trust them. I don't know, because they said that was supposed to be out this year. So it might be further into 26. We'll see. So they really would love to have a pause as far as that goes. Now let's go over to, and so I do believe there's valid points in the paper. I'm not discounting that. I just think that the tone of that paper is a little too negative, and a little too it benefits Apple a little too much, especially with the timing with WWDC, that they dropped that paper. And so I think there was definitely thought that went into that. All right, let's move over to Sam Altman and take his perspective now. So, one more thing on another reason why I don't think that the LLM and LRMs is the best environment. If we look at ChatGPT, it got crushed by an Atari 2600 playing against it. And it got absolutely crushed in chess and made incorrect moves and all this. I'm going to say it again. These models are not 100% right now. They are not optimized to take puzzles like those and solve them. And they're not optimized at all for those type of situations. They've been really optimized for other things: code, math, writing, some reasoning, absolutely planning, or at least helping to plan, right? In kind of that strategy, at least helping that way, and planning in terms of like putting a plan together, those type of things. They're really good at it. And they're getting way better at image generation and video generation and things like that. But understanding fully a puzzle and how from just an image, that is not a strong suit. And especially, like on this area where playing chess, it's not the model's strength. It's not what they were trained for. So now let's jump back over to Sam Altman. So Sam Altman here, why so much positivity? Well, I think that we can take this in two approaches, right? We can say, one, Sam lives and breathes this stuff, and his company is at the forefront, and that his take is very important when it comes to, where we're going. And if we are at the singularity, which is about to be an exponential growth over the next, 5 and 10 years. He sounds super positive on superintelligence, alluding that we're right at the cusp of AGI, if not somewhat there. So yeah, he's very positive. So why would he be positive if you want to play devil's advocate? Well, we have to remember Sam Altman and OpenAI, they still, they're doing really well in getting new funding, but they need an absolute ton of compute. And so they just made a deal with Google and their data centers to add compute, believe it or not. One of their chief competitors right now, in fact, I'd say their chief competitor right now with Microsoft is, and I think I would say Google's probably even a bigger competitor in terms of the models, ChatGPT and the models. I think that arguably Microsoft is maybe a bigger competitor on the product side, and OpenAI is a product company. We have to remember that. Models are just a means to the products that they're building. So anyway, why would they go over to the other competitor from Microsoft? Because they needed more compute. And that's just what it is. And they're with Oracle and SoftBank and all of them trying to get more compute. So Sam knows he has to raise a ton of money to be able to get the expansion, the amount of compute and data centers that he needs. He is so focused on the data center problem, as he's pointing out to in this article. So it benefits him greatly to say, hey, if everybody believes we're on our way, that, as he put it at the end here, I mean, rosy down here, right? We have a lot of work in front of us, but most of the path in front of us is now lit, and the dark areas are receding fast. So in other words, with more, all I need is more funding, and superintelligence is around the corner. That's what I'm trying to say. So I do believe he feels very optimistic. I don't know whether it's overly optimistic. That's what I'm trying to say. I think he feels confident, but is he exuding over optimism so that he can help also facilitate that, and which helps him get funding? We'll see. Time will tell, right? Time will tell. So I just wanted to point that out, where Apple and OpenAI could not have been more 180 degrees from each other, right? In this, when I say OpenAI, I'm talking Sam Altman. They couldn't be further. They're exactly mirror images in these two papers of what they believe. So now that you know all of that, I'll be interested to hear what you think. Who's right, Apple, and that the current LLMs and LRMs are broken and have hit a huge bottleneck? Or is Sam right, and that our path to AGI is pretty much here, and ASI is in front of us, and things are becoming lit, and the darkness is receding fast before it on the path on the way there? Let me know what you think. I'd appreciate it if you give me a like and subscribe so that you can find out about videos like this in the future. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.